AASA for giving me an opportunity to come back, because every time I come back, I am the one who's blessed on this. Now, I'm a study skills specialist, so when I talk this evening, I will be talking about being successful. A successful person is first confident, optimistic, and perseveres. Now, Henry Ford said that if you think you're going to be successful and you think you're going to fail, you're right in both instances. Because we actually create it all. We have to give people permission from an empowerment basis to make us sad, to make us happy. For us to be successful, we have to release our own inhibitions, our own power, and give that power to someone else. Now, of course, I come from a Christian background, so my prayers every morning are, one, create within me a clean heart, renew a right spirit in me, and the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in his sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. And then number 3, may everything I do and say this day be pleasing in his sight. So when I walk out, I want to do those things that brings him honor. And the only way I can do that is to bring honor to his children. I can't bring honor to him. He's already honored. So the only way I can do that is to bring honor to his children. So I want to be a part of the success team of anybody that I come in contact with. So whenever you see me, there are 2 things that I may ask you. Number 1, where you go to church, but the next thing I want to know is, are you in school? And if so, what are your goals? And then I join you in that. Now, I believe for the students here that all of you are going to be successful. I can say that because you're here tonight. There was a study done by Skip Downing with successful students, and they were spending time talking about why students succeed and why students fail. So instead of spending a lot of time talking about failure, they tracked successful students. And what they found that was so profound, but yet at the same time it wasn't, is that students who were successful fell into 4 categories. Number 1, they attended class regularly and they were on time. The second thing, they took quizzes and tests when they were assigned. In other words, they weren't looking for makeup, quizzes or tests. They took them when they were assigned. The other thing is they turned in assignments when they were due. Homework. Whenever it was due, they turned them in. But the 4th thing is that they knew what to do if they had to be absent. Now, in college, we assume that if a student is not in class, that student had to be absent. It could have been illness, it could have been a child care situation, it could have been a family emergency, but we assume, and I'm still an educator, I will always be an educator, we assume that if a student is not in class, that student had to be absent. But the student who was successful knew what to do when he or she had to be absent. Now, how did he or she know that? What to do? Number 1, they had their syllabi. They knew exactly what their agendas said. They knew they were in class regularly, remember? They were on time. They took their quizzes and tests. So they had to stay up to date with the class in order to be ready to take the quizzes and tests on time, but also they knew what the guidelines for that class were, so to make sure that they talked to the instructor, or they knew in other words, whatever steps there were in place, they knew what to do if they had to be absent from class. Now, what I'd like for you to do right now is not to spend a lot of time right now on if I coulda, woulda, shoulda. Because we can't change anything except right now. So I want to indulge you just for a few minutes to say, where are you right now academically? So you say, here's where I am. I'm making 70% in math. That was my weakest subject. Unlike my cousin here with chemistry, math was my challenge. Okay, so you're making, this is midterm, you're making a C in math. Where do you need to be, or where should you be? Now, a C is good standing, but I ask you a question. If you had the opportunity to look at a transcript of the person wiring your house, and you could look at 3 transcripts, and you're taking the 3 bids, and money was not the major problem, so you could afford all 3, and you had an opportunity to look at that transcript and you saw one with a 70%, a C average, a B average, 80%, or one with an A average, 90%. Which one would you hire? Now, hands say the 90%. Okay? Hands say 80%. Hands say 70%. Now, none of you said 70%, but I know that you're thinking it because you're saying what? You're saying 70%. That meant that they didn't know it all, so they knew that going into it, and that meant they would take their time and some say that it may be less expensive. However, here's what you have to keep in mind. Tests simply measure your ability to respond to a given set of information at a given time. Tests rarely measure what you know. How many times have you taken a test and walked away from that test and remembered many of the answers that you were unable to give when you took it? So we know that. That's the truth. Tests rarely measure what you know. But what it does say is the person's transcript who had a C average there, that wire, the electrician, was not unable to respond to 30% of the information on that test. Unable to respond now to 30%. Do you want your house wired by someone who could not remember 30% of the connections? Okay? So even though C's are passing, the same thing is true when you get ready to get a job. It is very competitive, extremely competitive. For every faculty position that I had a minimum of 25 qualified applicants. Now, there were more than that, but even when we screened it, they had the minimum requirements of a master's degree and X number of hours in the field, etc. I have 25 applicants in front of me that meet the minimum requirements for the job. If I'm going to hire somebody, then there's only one spot. Only one spot. So if you're going in for a job and they're able to look at your transcripts, which they ask you to attach when you apply for the job, and they're looking at it, which one are they going to choose if the job only pays $35,000? That's it. It's a $35,000 job in Tulsa, Oklahoma now. Okay, some of the other states more. But or $45,000 or $55,000 or even $65,000. They're looking for the ones who demonstrate on a consistent basis 80% or more of the information that they were exposed to while they were in college. Now that puts us in a very competitive line. But I go back to, here's where you are right now in your classes. Do an assessment for me. Once you find out where you are, then where do you need to be? You need to be a minimum of a C average, but preferably a B average. Now, do you want to get to the B average? Now, I say, do you want to? You say, well, everybody wants to. Not necessarily. Some people can be satisfied with where they are. But I'm going to assume that you're not. I'm going to assume that all of you want to do your very best. So that means that I hope that none of you will say, unless you have an A average in a class right now, that you're where you want to be. Then the next question is, can you get there? Now, can you get there? What do you need to do? And who do you need to contact? Now, can you get there? You say, well, if I have done so poorly right now that there is no way. But very seldom is there any situation that you'll ever encounter where it's hopeless. And academically, it's usually not hopeless because you have other things that you can do between now and December to make whatever happen you want to happen. And I'm going to assume that it's successful. Then you need to make a plan of action. So that means you need to make a things to do list. You need to take each class separate. And you need to organize a plan of action for each class that you're taking. Most of you are taking at least 4. So organize yourselves into what do you need to do to get to where you want to get academically in that class. Write it all down. List things that require help, like going to the library, or making an appointment with the instructor, or seeking the aid of a tutor. Then list even the distractors. Now the distractors could be that your Aunt Betty gave you a birthday gift and you have not yet called her to say thanks. Or you need to pay your cell phone bill, and you know how we are about our cell phones. If you don't pay that bill and you're sitting in class, what are you doing? Thinking about the bill. And so whatever distractor you have, take care of it. Whatever it is on it. Even if it means borrowing the money to pay your cell phone bill. And if your parents are like I am about my grandson, I pay his bill because I want to be in touch with him. So he thinks I'm doing it for him, but I'm doing it for me. Okay, on that. So I will pay his bill. But get everything done, all the distractors out of the way. Now, one author said that obstacles are what you see when you take your eyes off your goal. As long as you're geared to your goal, you can't see those things that are getting in your way. You can't even hear those people that are trying to discourage you. Because if you do, it becomes positive motivation to you. Or some people call it negative motivation, but I call it positive motivation because all I needed was someone to tell me what I couldn't do. And I stepped into first gear because I had to do it then because they said I couldn't on that. So get your motivation, whatever it is on it, on that. And then the next step then is to implement your plan. That means first start with the things that are due immediately. Now, don't be guilty of sometimes with me. I'll be working on things that are due next week, but I haven't worked on the things that are due tomorrow on that. So write your due dates when you make your things to do list. Write your due dates beside them. Start with the things that are due immediately. Then know when to ask for help. That's one of my weaknesses because I was taught to never ask anyone to do anything for you that you can do for yourself. But there are times when people, and there are always people ready to help you. And there are times when we all need help. Don't ever hesitate to ask someone to help. You know who these people are. And if you don't have any significant others in your life, get yourself a significant other. Get somebody that loves you unconditionally and has nothing to profit by your demise, that is simply interested in helping you achieve your goal. If you don't have anybody, I'll volunteer. Okay? But you can call me, I'll pray with you, whatever it is that you need to help you be successful, I will be that person. But get a significant other who will help you. Now, don't say, I don't deserve the help because I messed up. None of us deserve help. If truth be told, none of us deserve it. But say, I'm worth it. I'm worth it. I'm special. I'm one of God's children. I'm worth it. So I need help. And also now, if you want to say it and say, well, I hate to be indebted to somebody, I want you to suspend pride right now. Put pride on hold. Now, there's a certain amount of thing that says, I want to feel good about me. Yes, feel good about you. But not so proud that you won't ask for help. And that's one of our major problems. We're too proud to say, I need help on that. And there are a number of people that are just waiting for you to say that. Don't allow the room for if I woulda, coulda, shoulda. It can't change anything. If you're going to have a pity party, let it last 5 minutes and then get rid of the pity party. Then continue with the list until all items are completed. If you get to something that you can't do, then what should you do? Go what? To the next one. If you get to that one and you can't do it, what should you do? To the next one. Surely one of those are going to be one that you can do quickly. Check your list off. Don't cross them off, though, because you just do a checkpoint because you want to give yourself a pat on the back. And you may be all you have. You may be all you have. I hope you're not all you have. But if you are all you have, then pat yourself on the back and say, I've done a good job. If you hit a hurdle, move to the next step. Life is full of hurdles. Is life fair? No, it's not fair. So get rid of all of that. But then recognize a need to be flexible because we don't control life. Every now and then, one of us will hit a hurdle and we need to navigate around that hurdle. But notice I said navigate around the hurdle because going back to here's where I am, here's where I need to be, and I want to get there. Now, I want to share just a little in closing, a little bit about me. When I was in college, I wanted to be a teacher from the time I was 7 years old. A teacher in Sunflower, Mississippi, taught me to love education. She drove one way 90 miles from Jackson, Mississippi to Sunflower to teach us because it was segregation. And from that love that I had for her, I wanted to be a teacher. So when I got to college, it was in the 60s, and we could teach only at segregated schools in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And my ex was teaching at one of the elementary schools. I had a sister-in-law teaching at one of the elementary schools, and then I had another sister-in-law teaching at the other elementary school, and there were only 3 in Tulsa. But I continued to pursue elementary education because I wanted to teach. And the year that I graduated was the year that they integrated the schools, and I got a job in June. I graduated in May. I got a job in June for an August assignment. Now, God prepares the way. I am not giving myself credit. I'm sharing that with you because if you have a goal in mind, don't worry about the part of that. The only thing I could do was prepare myself for the goal. That's the only thing I was in charge of. And then God handled the rest of it. And I was able to teach for 4 years prior to coming to Tulsa Community College. So whatever goal you have in mind, let that goal be the determining motivator for you and not let anybody else or anything interfere with your reaching your goal. Thank you.